Welcome to Macon Memories. I'm Lynda Wright at Randolph-Macon College. I'm here today with Professor Jerry Ross. It's May the 7th, 2013. I first interviewed Professor Ross 5 years ago on April 22nd, 2008 with Religious Studies Professor Willie Chappell. To connect today's interview with that interview from 5 years ago, I want to begin by reading a comment Willie Chappell made in the joint interview you had in April 2008. He said, quote, "As I look back over my student days at Randolph-Macon, I come to the conclusion that for every student who came here, it was sort of a crisis in their life, and we were a crisis in the institution's life. That is, there was always something going on the scene and behind the scenes." End quote. I think that's a helpful way to approach the subject of the desegregation of Randolph-Macon. It was part of the ongoing story of crisis in the lives of individuals and of the institution. So I want to begin with your story, Jerry. You graduated from Randolph-Macon in '75, and you came as a freshman in the fall of '71 with the first class of women. Coeducation was a huge change for Randolph-Macon. However, the color barrier had been broken 6 years earlier when Haywood Payne transferred to Randolph-Macon in the fall of 1966 as a junior, graduating in '68. After Hap Payne, Dennis Howard was the first four-year African-American graduate of the college in 1972, then Reggie Barley and Fletcher Johnson in '74, and then you and Mike Love came and graduated in '75. So we can count on one hand. We really can count the number of African-American graduates up to you. So I want you to tell us your story about about your background, where you grew up, went to high school, and how you happened to come to Randolph-Macon.
I grew up in Richmond. I'm a native of Richmond, Virginia, and I'm a product of the public schools there. For the most part, I am a product of a segregated school system. Integration was occurring, I would say maybe by osmosis, but there was forced busing my last year of high school to try to manage and make the numbers proportionate. Governor Godwin at that time, I think it was, his daughter went to Kennedy, and he endorsed the integration of schools and really pushed that. My senior year, the seniors were permitted to finish out the high schools where they were, but others were moved all around. Product of segregated schools, and the schools were not bad. And at least the ones that I attended, and that may be because it was Richmond. From what I understand now, that Virginia paid for its segregation. The teachers who were forbidden to attend institutions of higher learning here were funded by the state to go to other states to get their masters, and also numbers of my teachers had their masters and were very proficient and sharp, and so we benefited tremendously from them. And as an honor student, I had the privilege of being with them, particularly during my during my high school years. With the honors classes, they were much smaller and more advanced, and so they really pushed us. And so it was an enriching experience, and we had questions about how integration would work out. And now, after these many years, it didn't work out as well as many had hoped. And so what integration did, to a significant degree, it may have swallowed up some of the histories, the artifacts, and things of the then African American institutions and schools as well. Some of that data has been lost now. Trophies that we won in high school, we don't know where they are. And we had trophies going back to the time of my father, the trophy cases and pictures and all. These things are gone. They're not in the existing Maggie Walker School, which is a governor's school.
And your father also went to Maggie Walker?
Yes, my mother went to Armstrong, so I had a
Oh,
wildcat and a dragon.
little rivalry. Yeah.
But and coming here now, one of the key things that was just ingrained in us, and because we're growing up in segregated times, and but the things that I appreciate that my black teachers, I call them black, taught me, they didn't teach us hatred. They taught us to be ready to compete. And
Mm-hmm.
so I
Mm-hmm.
was taught, study so you can compete with the white man, as they
Mm-hmm.
called it. And
Mm-hmm.
so my thing was to get their job, to get a job that's comparable to, because we're going to be vying for the same positions. And so um, I picked Randolph-Macon. And coming out of high school, I was intending to go to a white school to learn. I wasn't quite given that privilege in high school. My mother wasn't so ready for me to go to the integrated schools or the white
Right.
schools in like TJ or John Marshall and others. And a lot of those had better facilities
Yeah.
and monies than some of our black schools. And so she wasn't quite ready. So I went to Walker and I got the best I could out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But in going to and selecting a college, I was looking. Uh, I turned down Virginia Tech, a little too far from home. I'm first generation. And I never made it to William and Mary.
Oh.
And so that was to be the next stop. When I came here, I said, this is it. It's
Uh-huh.
nice and small, not too far from home. It's out of the city, and then all male. So I figured I'd have no distractions. I mean, I'm a young guy, and
Yeah.
I'm not Catholic or anything, so girls are wonderful. So I said, well, at least I can focus on my studies. And so that was one of the main reasons, and the second main reason, they had a good religious studies program.
Mm-hmm.
And had a friend here. Fletcher Johnson came ahead of me, but he graduated with me. So he
Was
was
he
here.
from Maggie Walker?
He was from John Marshall, played against him in high school.
Oh,
And so we
okay.
were rivals, but he knew about me. And as a basketball player, and
Yes.
we champions and all, they knew us, but also I think another thing that they may have known too, I was I was a student. I've always been
Yeah.
a kind of bookworm or nerd or whatever, and so I graduated salutatorian of my class. I had a 4.0 average.
Oh, wow.
And,
Congratulations.
and
Wow.
so a young lady beat me out. Somebody just gave me a picture from the afro that had us in it, and so my books were better than my basketball.
Oh.
And so I've always been a student. And so
Mm-hmm.
coming here, I'm looking at education, and really I had a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I figured if I go pro, that is a long shot. And even if I could have gone pro, I was betting on 3 years, I save all my money, and I have enough to do everything I need to do. That didn't happen, and I wasn't crying about that. But basketball was a plan to get to school because
Yeah.
I didn't have the monies and stuff. So I had a academic scholarship, athletic scholarship, and a loan,
Wow.
and I made it here. When I graduated, tuition at Randolph-Macon may have been $3,200, a whopping $3,200
Right.
bucks.
Full tuition.
Full
Right. Yes.
tuition.
Yes.
And so coming here was just exciting.
Yeah.
The ladies, but it's just getting into the mix and getting to college. And I did not perceive it to be a problem. I think we were learning each other. I think numbers of whites had some experience with blacks, more or less. And in the dorms together, we lived in the motel dorms. Garland, I remember Garland a couple of years, then Star. And my last dorm was Bennett. I was like RA then. But we just learned from each other.
Right.
And also being recruited by Coach Webb, had a special bond with Eddie because I played against Eddie in high school. We
Yes.
met them in the regionals, and so I knew about Eddie Webb, great shooter, and there was Paul Jess and others. So we were all in the dorm. Most of the basketball team was in the same dorm together,
Right.
and we just stuck together and bonded and traveled and had just great times together, and we learned from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned cultural peculiarities or distinctive things. We traveled. We looked out for each other. So if I carried him with me, I'm going to watch out for you, so
Mm-hmm.
nothing's going to happen to you. And the
Mm-hmm.
same with
Mm-hmm.
them. And so it was a real neat experience in that capacity. Um, Strange things, and it may sound kind of crude, but I use this expression as I talk to some of my friends. Um, I said, ignorance is not prejudice.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh, yeah.
there are smart folks in every group, and there are not so smart folks in every group. And so no one is just smart because they're this or they're that. And so we learn from each other. So I helped others with calculus, which I had in high school, which was the lowest math here, and others helped me with other different things. And so we learned from each other, and sometimes in spite of each other, and we had fun together.
But being part of a team sounds like that immediately gave you a sense of belonging.
Mm,
Mm-hmm. That
yes, that was our fraternity as such, and so.
yes.
Um, we studied, and we literally studied if we had classes together. Um, they don't quite have it now, but we used to have study days between the end of the term and the final exams. And these study days would be 3 or 4 days where persons did just that. They
Mm-hmm.
brushed up on whatever work, and you had study groups for every subject. And guys were practically dorming with each other, studying
Right.
and working.
Uh-huh.
And they had little snack breaks in the evening.
Yeah.
And so we literally studied. Um, Sometimes guys, they are shady side. So I didn't do it because I was too terrified to try it. But even they got together to plan cheating sheets and schemes. But
Oh my
guys
goodness.
studied together, so they worked together to get things, and that was the most exciting thing. I remember not understanding something. I walked to a guy's room, knocked on his door, and he sat down and explained some things to me.
Yeah.
And I did the same for others as
Mm-hmm.
we just shared. Big goal, we want to graduate
Right. Right. And do well.
and want to learn. And during that time, no computers for the computer science major was somewhere in Copley somewhere had great big computers that stood, and you had these Fortran cards that you took.
Yeah.
I never took it. So prior to that time, you'd hear typewriters.
Yeah.
Everybody had
Right.
a typewriter, and you typed your papers. You had to write them first, and then you type them up and all. So it was really an exciting experience. I came here to prepare for ministry, to get an education, and basketball was a means to that,
Right.
and also to learn. And with that learning, to learn from persons with whom I hadn't had much contact.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with the forced busing at my senior year of high school, we had an increased number, significantly increased number of whites at Maggie Walker. Never before like that. And they were on the football team, basketball team, and we shared and worked together and came to appreciate them. Um, Numbers of them were from the Oregon Hill area in Richmond, and
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
where VCU is
Mm-hmm.
now.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the Oregon Hill area and some of the West End areas, we didn't quite like each other. So we were put together. The movie Remember the Titans gives you a taste
Yes.
of what it was kind of like in some cases. Persons were put together, and we learned to deal with one another. And I don't think there weren't any big no big ruckus or anything,
Right.
but we learned from each other and from being forced to be together, and I think that was the beauty of that experience.
So you'd had a taste of that your senior year in high school,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
though prior to that it was pretty segregated school.
Pretty
But
segregated.
mm-hmm.
My first white teacher would have been in junior high school, and we had summer programs. Lyndon Johnson, I think it was, started these free summer programs, and this was mainly for kids in the low-income areas. And what happened, they would pull you off the streets during the summer. You went on trips
Mm-hmm.
to expose you culturally. You worked on English and math, and that would help to improve your skills. And
Yeah.
so, and it kept you off the street and out of trouble. So
Yeah.
I participated in those, and you had fun. These
Yeah.
were the girls, we danced and
Right.
recreation and everything. Had my first white teacher then, and I think his name was Mr. Hubbard.
Uh-huh.
He taught math. He liked basketball, so he'd always be doodling basketball plays on his sheet and stuff. But I remember him. I remember him
Uh-huh.
distinctly, and he was a real treat. He was a good egg. I'm not sure what high school where he worked or not,
Right.
but
Well, you said your mother was not ready for you to go your senior year when students had the option of
hmm
really being bused to a
hmm
different student. But how did she feel about your coming to Randolph-Macon then?
um, I I I think she felt. I think she felt. I think she felt well about it. Coach Webb came and talked to the family, and then there were others here with which I could share. Then also, a friend of my father's who worked with him lived here in the Ashland
Oh,
area.
okay.
And so my father worked at Rich Food. He was a truck driver.
Uh-huh.
And so friends and folks up in this area that they knew, and so they could kind of watch and see.
So that's good.
And,
You had a family friend right in town.
yes, and they near here that they could at least check. And so when they would go up, certainly they can ride by and see. And then the folks, friends that I made, had to do with the church community and also the greater community. Most of the cooks and persons who were cleaning the dorms lived around here,
Mm-hmm.
and many of them attended Shiloh Baptist, where I went to church.
Oh, okay. So you
And,
attended church here in town, Shiloh
and
Baptist,
so
and so you were friends with many people, many
yeah,
staff members here.
yes,
Right.
and so the persons that cooked for us, one was Miss Emily Goins. She's gone now. She died, I think she was around 93, 94,
Mm.
95. She was one of the big mothers in the community. Um, she would cook, and even on the days when we came back for practice during the holidays, sometimes I opted out of staying here in the dorms. I stayed at her house, and she had an old
Oh,
wood stove that she would cook on, and
yeah.
she made rolls about 3 inches high. And I slept in a feather bed. So, so,
Oh, wow.
but the community adapted us,
Yeah.
and so that was the neatest thing ever. And so they looked out for us
Right.
and cared for us. Crazy. We had a food ride my freshman year.
Oh, okay. And tell about that.
um, the students complain about food now. Food then was different. You didn't have all of these options. You had one main plate, and that was a main meal of meat, and you didn't get a second on it.
Mm-hmm.
And other options, maybe you can get extra desserts, but you just didn't get these seconds like talking
Yeah.
about. And so students were very displeased. And they had a food ride. I was in basketball practice, so I heard about it.
Good for
And
you.
the coach came out and pleaded with the food service provider to get us to eat. So we did get something to eat. But I understand around 6 o'clock or so on that afternoon, you could cut the tension in the cafeteria, and all of a sudden it erupted. And so persons threw food everywhere. Tables were turned, food was on the ceiling, food was thrown at the folks behind the serving counters.
Oh,
Everything
no.
was just totally disrupted because they were dissatisfied with the
Yes.
food service. And we came over and looked, it was just incredible. I wasn't too worried. The folks in the community were going to feed me. I would contact them,
Right.
and because I was a Sunday school guy and went to
Yes.
church there, so I wasn't worried about eating. But we managed to get something to eat, and the food improved.
Uh-huh.
Um,
So it just
I can't think of what the name was. That something, Aramaic or something, food service. And then we changed, and it got very much better.
I was going to ask if you had a food service or if it was just locally provided. You
Yeah,
did. There
yeah.
was a food
There
service
was a
that they were.
food service, and I can't call the name of them. I remember Mr. Ed Pfister was in charge of food my freshman year. I used to mess and call him Joe Feaster, but his name was Ed Pfister.
Well, now several people have told me that in those early years, most of the black students ate together
Yes.
an evening meal. Can you talk about that?
Yes, there weren't many. If my freshman year, we got up to the number of 15, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Whopping number of 15. There was 7 in my class, and out of that 7, three of us graduated. It was Mike Love, Dave Chavis, and myself. All the others dropped. Yes, it was James. What was James? I couldn't think of what James' last name. He was a football player. He left after the first year. John Counts was from New Jersey. He had an accent, upstate Trenton, New Jersey. He dropped out. Glenda Dickerson. I think she may have finished another school. She dropped out. Charlotte Beeman attended. She was from Richmond. John Marshall, my class. Not, same year. She attended a while and she left, I think, after her mother passed. And I think she must have finished VCU and went on to get her, I think, PhD. She's in psychology. So that left Love, Dave Chavis, and myself. Dave Chavis is from Armstrong. Mike Love was from Front Royal. And I was Walker. So we three and Fletcher fell back into our class, and so he marched with us.
So he graduated, marched with you. Well, and Mike Love also became a minister, I think, didn't he?
He's a minister
Were you
around the Chicago
both religious studies majors together?
He was psychology.
Oh, okay, good.
I think his father had been a minister, but Love would come to church with me many times. He was a good guy. And so he was in psychology. He worked for Sears for about 25 years and retired, and then started a church. And so he's doing well in the Chicago area. It's either north or south of Chicago.
Well, no, you were a religious studies major, correct? And you said you came knowing that you wanted to go into the ministry. We want to talk about academics for a while. I know you were really nurtured by Willie Chappell from your previous interview, but other faculty who were important to you, or any relationships with faculty or the academics that you want to talk about?
Yes. The three. It was Willie Chappell, Ira Andrews, and B.J. Seymour. And so those were the three religious studies professors, and there was a fourth who I never had a course with him, but he was the chair. It's Cliff Edwards. He's at VCU now. I think he's still there. And so Willie Chappell was on sabbatical my freshman year, so I hadn't met him. So I had Ira for a couple of courses, Old Testament, New Testament, and BJ I had for most was religion and literature during the January term. We call it the colloquium. So that was enriching. I had to learn the academics of biblical studies. This was the first time I've ever seen it or encountered the thought that you could make a living teaching the Bible. I said, oh, this is nice. You think of ministry, but this is a different kind. And so that's the first time I was exposed to the idea or the perception that teaching the Bible, you can make a living with it as a career in the ministry. And I bit into that, and so I thought it was really, really neat.
Wow.
And, before coming, knowing that because I signed my letter, it's all in the paper, letter intent to come, and so I was a star basketball player, But before coming, Lewis Haynes was one of the classics professors who taught Greek. He sent me a letter. He said, if you're going into ministry, you need to know Greek, these kinds of languages. And so I signed to take Greek.
Good for you.
I knew I was going to take it before coming. I'm going to take Greek, and I did take maybe about 4 years of Greek. I was.
So you had all of that before you even went to seminary.
Yeah,
That's
4 years of Greek and about a year of Hebrew, and I was in the Classics Honor Society. I think it's Eta Sigma Phi. I think it's Eta Sigma Phi, Eta Phi Sigma, the Classics Society, and ODK. I managed to get into that. But I signed up to take that, and so I was on my way. I had to learn to write, as all students do, go to the next level of writing. And so my freshman year, it was good. It was good. I think I did the things I needed to do, and it was adjustment year. I had to make the adjustments in studying. Studying and basketball were two different things. Basketball now was more draining, and now the books more challenging. And so I made it through my freshman year, and I made it with a B average.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Good.
that sounds deceptive. That sounds like more than what it is. I made it with a B average. And so I had A's and C's
Yeah.
to balance each other off.
Oh.
My A's was in calculus,
Oh,
which I
good.
had in high school.
Right. So that was
And my C's were in English and religious studies. So I had A's in calculus, A's in Greek, and then C's in others, and they balanced each other off. And so I managed, and I got adjusted
yeah.
with a studying routine and also learning to write again.
Yeah.
Or at least the next level of writing. You had to do term papers. You were introduced to that in high school, but now the structure of writing and also learning to read, how to read things and stuff. And so I made it through the freshman year, and I was still here, and so I was so happy. I took off after the freshman year, and so I had learned how to study, how to read, at least laid some foundations,
Yeah.
and so after that I soared.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And so um, uh, within the major, I probably was I was definitely over three. I was probably maybe in 3.5 or something in the
In your
major.
major. Uh-huh.
And overall, when I graduated, I was a B average,
Mm.
3.05 or something like that. So that was a
Yeah.
goal that I had set for myself. But took studying seriously. And in religious studies at that time, it wasn't a matter of whether you had a paper, it was how many.
Yes.
So for every course, there was at least 2 or 3 papers.
Yeah.
And this, so you have 2 courses, and sometimes I had about 3 courses in religious studies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them do about 2 or 3 papers per class.
Yeah.
And so typing goes on, and you have to plan ahead. And those were the days of card catalogs, and
Yep.
you have your little note card files
Yes.
that you did.
Yes.
And so this was the stuff of things. But it was fun. From Willie Chapel, I learned about note taking. And that was from writing down the notes he would write on the board for us.
Uh-huh.
With note taking, and I've written things up and shared it with students now about how to take notes.
Yeah.
Um, Capturing the topic, relating your information to that topic, identifying things, defining what's the logical connects. I learned how to take notes, and also in learning how to take notes like that, I learned how I learn.
Right.
Um, uh, to me, everyone doesn't learn the same, and so I mastered how to learn and then how I learn.
Mm-hmm.
And once I could do that, I soared. And so even now, I'm a chronic note taker. And when I read books, if they're going to be meaningful to me, I have to do write-ups on them.
Yeah.
Once I write them up, I don't even need the book anymore.
You can remember, right.
I have it in the format in which I can learn and understand it and process it. And that I learned from Willie Chapel.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
so I do this with students now. I put notes on Moodle, and I feel like I'm spoon feeding them.
Yeah.
But I get the sense that maybe they haven't learned how to look for structure and connect ideas.
Right. And maybe, in 30 years, there'll be a student sitting right here and say, I learned how to take notes from Jerry Ross.
I hope. I hope.
So that one can only hope. Well, let's talk a little bit about the social scene when you were a student. Just describe that. You talked a little bit about the dorm. You talked about basketball, meals. What was dating like? And I know you said you were involved in the town. So just that whole social scene.
Ashton was extremely dull. I knew this upon coming, and so
Yes.
my thoughts were, I'm coming for education. Playing ball would be fun on the side, and education. I had I had 1 or 2 teachers in high school. Since we had the forced busing, also teachers were bused,
Right.
and so my calculus teacher, Mrs. Baker, was white, and Mrs. Weston, my English teacher, was white. Her husband was a Randolph-Macon grad.
Oh.
So both of them were cheering when I came signed to go to Randolph-Macon. They
good.
were so happy for me.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Weston, I would see her from time to time when her husband would come back for occasions. I see
nice.
him, they wave at me. Um, in coming here, it was the education that was really there, and that was really impressed upon me. Um, and so boredom, oh wait, that's just less distractions. Ashton was an extremely boring place. Um, there was a 7-Eleven across from that little mall area, and that
Mm-hmm.
mall area developed tremendously. Where we have in downtown Ashton. And all of those hotels on the other side of Route 1, they were not there. That was all woods. There's an original truck stop that's way down there. And that was way down
The
there. I
one that's
mean,
still there in Doswell.
yes,
Yeah.
the one near 95.
Oh, that way. Uh huh.
That
Uh huh.
original truck, that the original truck stop, that was the only thing that was there
Yeah.
after dark
Yeah.
that would be open. And so if you wanted something to eat after the cafeteria closed, you would go to the CX, the campus exchange, and after they closed, you would go down to 7-Eleven or way down to the truck stop and you get something to eat. So very
Right.
boring place. I dated a young lady around here, and so her mom worked down at the truck stop. So sometimes I could get down there and get something to
Get
eat.
get a good meal. You
I
you
get
know how to
something
look
to eat.
out for your meal ticket.
Yeah, with that boredom, the fun was on campus. We planned things.
Yeah.
I'm 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 with a committee. I work with a diversity committee, a diversity council, and one of the concerns was students finding things to do. We had to plan our activities, so we got
Mhm.
together and planned our makeshift parties or whatever on the
Mhm.
weekends or our road trips.
Mhm.
So the road trips could be you can go into Richmond, the black colleges, or go to Mary Washington or Mary Baldwin. There was all girls schools then. Or go anywhere. You get in your cars and go. Guys
Mhm.
had cars, or either they brought young ladies in for the weekend.
Mhm.
They shared. So we planned activities,
Mhm.
and the 15 of us, we even formed. Gosh, we formed a kind of organization where we collected our monies and things to plan things, particularly for Camp Talent.
Mhm.
The Camptown races, that was, oh gosh, that was a tremendous weekend. That week, students wouldn't go to class too much, and it was just almost one full week of party.
When you say you planned things, so you mean the 15 black students would get
Mm-hmm.
together and you would plan your own activity, or was
Mm-hmm.
or so you were doing your own thing, but in conjunction with the larger group,
With the larger
right?
groups, and we invite persons. Sometimes we could get space where the campus center is being built. Were a couple of houses there, old houses, and between them, a lot of times standing water and swamp, but a couple of old houses, and we could grab space in those houses and have our parties.
Uh huh.
And we invite others there. Uh,
So the parties were mixed racially.
mm-hmm.
You would host them, but other
we,
people would come.
yes, we invite our friends to
Yeah.
persons, and they
Right.
would invite us to the fraternity
Yeah.
houses. And so we'd go there, um, especially, I was especially close to SAE.
Oh, okay.
Um, Paul Jazz, oh gosh, let me call the other one. Paul Jazz, Paul Zadimer, Bruce Gainey. Eventually, Bruce was a year after me, but others, Mike August, others, Rusty, all of them were SAEs, and they were just some dear friends, and so just enjoyed being with them. And but a lot of fraternities opened their arms to us, and we just were sharing all. Um, at that time, KA was an interesting fraternity.
Yeah.
And
Talk a little bit about
it
that,
has
'cause,
some history.
yeah.
And, um, they were known to put on the Old South each year,
Uh huh.
and they would dress in Confederate uniforms and have their ladies in Southern bells. I went in the fraternity house. I was a member of a Christian fellowship group which we formed, and one guy was a gem of a fella. Gosh, I can't think of his name. But he was just the most warm guy, and I would go to see him sometimes. And
He
so
was a
that's
KA. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in the house they had this gigantic Confederate flag hanging over the fireplace.
Uh huh.
And so interesting now.
So,
None of them approached me or us in any kind of way. Sometimes one time we had just run-ins at a baseball game or something or another, but I think they kept some of them kept to themselves, or they were gentlemanly as they treated me, so I didn't sense anything from them.
But you were talking about going to fraternity parties. That was the exception then.
Yeah, I
For the
don't
most
think I
part.
ever went over there for anything. You know, I
Right,
don't remember.
right, but now there was a black fraternity started at one point, the Omega Sci-Fi,
Yeah,
and tell about that.
okay. Wasn't started, we all pledged that. We never had a chapter here. And so I pledged my senior year, and a young man who was with me graduated. He was 2 years behind me, Sanford Morgan. He was a sophomore. I was a senior. We pledged together. And the year before, it was Chris Turner, not Chris Turner, Chris Lee, Chris
Uh-huh.
Lee, Fletcher Johnson, and Mike Love. They pledged before me the
Uh-huh.
year before. So they were in 74, we were in 75. So at one point, there were 5 of us on campus. We participated in the Panhandle Council,
Yeah.
but we didn't have a chapter. And so all of us graduated, and so ended.
So it was a national fraternity. It's just
Yeah.
you never got the chapter fully established here.
Yeah, it's not enough.
Okay.
And we pledged, a grad chapter pledged us. At that time, it was pledging and it's for intake. And it was, the fraternity thing was, for me, it was keyed by our togetherness. We were together. And so I pledged Omega mainly because they did. We
Yeah.
were brothers and we
Right.
shared together. I looked at some of the white fraternities here, and you kind of wonder, this is early now in the 70s
Right.
and stuff. I just wondered. And I think Fletcher Johnson came up with the idea of pledging Omega, and Christopher Lee's father was an Omega.
Okay.
And so we said, we'll go with Omega. That year that I pledged, also Danny Connors was here. He's been on the trustee board several times, and so 2 years behind me. He should have finished in 77.
Okay.
Danny's father was a Sigma, and so Danny was going to pledge, but I think his father must have pressured him, like he didn't want him to pledge Jamaica. But we were very close, Danny and I were very close. But that was a fraternity presence that we had on campus, and it was really, really neat. One of the reasons I pledged Omega, certainly our bonding, but I did some investigation. I was thinking ministry, and by the time that I pledged, I was a licensed minister. I got licensed my junior year
Oh, okay.
as clergy, and so I'm looking to see what things are in accordance with my values.
Right.
And so Omega Sci-Fi Fraternity Incorporated met my scrutiny. It has cardinal principles, man, scholarship, perseverance, uplift. You have 20 pearls, value and principles. And one of his founders is a minister.
Yeah.
He was an undergrad at that time, but Bishop Love was his name. And so those things were inspiring to me. And I looked, I said, well, this would be consistent with what I'm about. Now, I saw the fraternity from this side. When you go into black campuses, you see the other dimensions of it. And so,
What can you say about that? What do you mean?
yes, the social life obviously will be drastically different on black campus, and the black fraternities with their houses or rooms and in their environments. Sometimes they can be just as wild as you can see Animal House and things like
I
this.
see what
And
you
so
said.
I didn't see that here. So here we were bonding and working within the parameters of Randolph Macon, and with some degree of sensibleness and quality.
Yeah.
I look at some other places, guys were wild.
Yeah.
And maybe too wild. And
Right.
so it's interesting seeing that. And it has a fun side with all of the dancing and all that, just the stepping, because we did a step show here and things like that. But some of it can be crazy, and that's what fraternity guys do sometimes.
Well, right. I guess that's part of it.
But, we planned parties and gathered, and I think that was most exciting. Like I say, Ashland, very quiet, but I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that.
You were looking for that, you said, so
I
you didn't
wanted
mind.
no distractions. I was a student, and my goal here, one of the goals academically was to have a B average, and I did. I made the B average, and I graduated. Um, Coming here was a conscious choice and a real commitment. Either I was going to come here or either get a job, and either way, I had to register for the draft. Vietnam was going on.
Right. Okay.
And so those who weren't doing something constructive, and particularly college, and even sometimes if you're in college, you may have been up for the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so my number didn't come up. It was a 3-digit one, so it didn't come up. I had a friend of mine who had 2-digit numbers. And so you're worried about your number coming up. And so I had no B plans.
Yeah.
So if I didn't make it here, I'd have to find a job, and I realized I had no skills, no technical skills.
Exactly. To make
and-
the job so important that you'd be
Yeah.
exempt. Yes.
In high school, you remember the high schools had business, trade, academic. I took the academic track. Those who took the business track and the trade track, they had a trade coming out of high school. So some were they had brick masons, tailoring, young ladies in business. And so when they left high school, some of them were even working in business places where they can go and get a job. I had none of those.
Right.
And so if I didn't pass, there was no job my father could offer me. I either go in the military or try to find something. So this was going to work. And so I let nothing come between me and my education and my books. And so some weekends, I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I stayed here and I studied. And also I learned to live with myself. I was sometimes bored.
Yeah.
So
you had to find a way to combat that. Yeah.
And in that case, I explored all that Randolph-Macon offered. We had speakers coming in, free movies, different activities on campus, even in and out the dorm rooms with friends, listening to music and sharing and all. So that I learned from others, and also I learned to deal with me. And so I remember some weekends I studied, and I was just bored here, but I learned to live with myself and enjoy it. And I think that was good for me. I can be by myself. I think some persons need to be entertained or engaged or have not learned what makes them tick. Or either maybe I think sometimes they are scared of themselves, to be in the room with themselves. And so I learned that. And that's all of this now. I'm thinking ministry now, so I'm preparing.
Yeah.
And Chaplain Gibson, Bill Gibson, was the chaplain then. Upon knowing that I was interested in ministry, he managed to get funds for me to go to retreats. So I went to some retreats,
good.
and we were courted by Young Life. I think it was Young Life Christian Fellowship. No, Young Life was in high school.
InterVarsity?
InterVarsity. And so they had different trips and things retreats we would go to. And so that was neat.
Did you participate in any ministry on campus? Leading
We
Bible
formed
studies or anything?
Good News Christian Fellowship.
Okay.
That was a crew. We all formed it by virtue of the dining hall. The dining hall experience. I would typically come late on Sundays because I'm coming from church.
Right.
I'm dressed up in my suit with a Bible in my hand. I was a Sunday school teacher starting in high school. And so I went to Shiloh. I would teach Sunday school.
Well,
and
that's
so I would
wonderful.
come so persons would see me. And then also, when you eat, persons would say grace over their food.
Yes.
So we kind of learned and saw each other and began to approach each other.
Yes.
Also, I wrote some things in the student paper.
Okay.
And that kind of, I showed my hand.
Sort of devotional type things?
No, this was just reflective. 'Cause
okay.
you're out of the 70s. And so, and one of I have a copy of it. One of them counteracted the stereotypes. And one of them, you play basketball. I said, I didn't do more than play basketball.
Yeah.
And I think I ended one of the little editorial pieces says hard being a Christian. and,
Look how
and,
people
and so,
thinking or talking. Yeah.
and so persons begin to meet and see, and I think we met together over the summer. Was that the first summer or the second summer? I think we met together over the summer. I think after maybe my sophomore year, either my freshman or sophomore year, and we planned. No, it was after my sophomore year, and we planned the fellowship, and we organized, and we call it Good News, and we would meet in Duncan Memorial on Thursday evenings and pray and share and do different things. We'd make wreaths during Christmas time. We'd have the Stations of the Cross during Good Friday, uh, different dinner things together. And so I was one of the leaders of it. My friends would tease me and call me Jesus.
But that was a racially mixed group. The good news, yeah, that was just anybody on campus who was interested in the fellowship. That's
I
great.
got exposed to United Methodists and others, and there was an African American bishop in the United Methodist Church who would come here. Older gentleman, I can see him now.
Oh, okay.
His hair was thin, rounded face, clean shaven. I can't remember his name.
Methodist bishop.
So they would come from time to time to the church and to the school, and so I remember meeting him, and I can't remember the occasions or why. But also at Duncan Memorial, the minister would work with us too. Chaplain Gibson, he was working on the campus, but the minister, oh gosh, I think his last name may have been Miller. Not sure if I'd have to look it up. Because his daughter also came here. And then there was another pastor. No, he was from there. His name was Acosta. He was in the United Methodist Church. And his daughter attended. I got summer jobs. About 3 summers. That's 3 summers I worked at Centenary United Methodist Church in Richmond.
Oh, through.
Doing their summer program.
Okay.
Dave Hyman, who's the pastor at Duncan,
Yes.
was a senior when I was a freshman. And so Dave had heard and seen about me, and Dave is a SAE as well. And so Dave offered me a job working. That's how I made the contact.
Okay.
I found out about Cincinnati United Methodist working in their summer program. Dave was a deacon of sorts.
Right,
there then.
right.
I think it was Dr. Blankenship or Blanken something, who was the head senior pastor at Centenary. So I worked during the summer programs there, and Dave was a main contact, and I was exposed to United Methodist, so that was really neat.
That is. That's very interesting.
I learned the United Methodist. When I was in Pittsburgh, I was exposed to Presbyterians.
Okay.
It was when I got
You're
to
very
Pittsburgh.
ecumenical. Yeah.
Yes, when I got to Pittsburgh, I had to go to seminary first. I went down to Richmond and Union, and all this Presbyterian. It was there at Union, and then in Pittsburgh, it dawned on me what the Hampton-Sydney game is about. So this is a denominational clash.
Oh, okay.
The United Methodists, they're Presbyterian.
Okay, so you see it in
This
denominational
is a
terms.
denominational clash between who got the best schools. I said, oh my goodness. So, because when I went to
Interesting.
seminary, met some guys from Hampton-Sydney.
Yeah.
I said, oh my goodness, this is what this is about. This is a denominational clash here.
Interesting. I've never seen Hampton Sydney Week. They never pitch it that way, do they?
No, so I just look and I said, this may be the rivalry.
But Virginia Union now, is that denominational?
It was founded by American Baptists.
American Baptist.
We have everybody in there, and
Right.
all different denominations have been represented on the faculty and in the student body. But it's founded by the American Baptists out of Lumpkin's Jail.
Oh.
Lumpkin's Jail originally was a house, I think, of sorts or something, bought from the Lumpkins, and this jail housed slaves. And so freed slaves. It became a station where they were first taught and taught ministry. So the School of Theology at Virginia Union was Virginia Union's earliest school. It became a grad school during the time of Dr. Ellison, the first African American president during the 40s. It became a
Uh-huh.
graduate school.
Interesting. Fascinating history. Yeah.
And so Virginia Union is the Lumpkin Jail would be downtown where they have that the slave walk or something
Down by the canal, kind
yeah,
of.
down by the canal.
Mm-hmm.
And so around that area would have been Lumpkin Jail.
Well, talking about Virginia Union, you went after Randolph-Macon. You went directly there to graduate school,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned in your earlier interview that you were preparing for ministry in the Black church.
Mm-hmm.
So how was it? You came to Randolph-Macon, which was when all your 4 years here was predominantly white
Mm-hmm.
institution, and then you went to Virginia Union preparing for ministry in the Black church. How was that transition?
Interesting. Coming out of high school, I wanted to go and see.
Right.
And also in picking the school, a good religious studies program. And
Mm-hmm.
what I perceived, Randolph-Macon had a good one. If Virginia Tech had one, I possibly would have gone because they offered me a full NCAA scholarship.
Yeah.
Far away from home, but also in the religious studies. And then when I came here, this was small, saw the religious studies major, was really nice. I said, this is good. And I signed right away. I didn't even check out William and Mary.
Yeah.
Going to Virginia Union, I was impressed by one of their graduates who was several years ahead of me. When I graduated from college here, he was graduating from seminary. And he said, you're going to work in a black church, you need the training. And so that kind of sold me on going to Virginia Union. I think Professor Chappell and some of the others had ideas that I should go to Drew or Yale or some of these others. So
Right.
I didn't pursue those. So I went to Virginia Union with that, for that focus and orientation in black church. And I got it. I thought it was really good there. Not knocking Virginia Union, and I'm not trying to put them down, but the challenge was in the orientation of working with African American congregations and learning the needs and all. I wasn't so. I hate to say a challenge academically. The pace of the class. And so I think the pace of the class was oriented by the students in it.
Mm-hmm.
Having been here with Bible and this and that, I wanted a faster pace.
Mm-hmm. Well, in
And
4 years of Greek, most students don't go to seminary with 4 years of Greek and some Hebrew.
And so when I was there, they're starting back
Yes.
where I had been,
Right.
and then students fighting with the professors about, taking their Jesus and this and that. And so, Lord have mercy. And then some having their disabilities they haven't dealt with, soft spots. And so I worked through it because one time I thought I would leave Virginia Union. And another guy who served as pastor here, Dick Solon, he was the New Testament professor. And I would talk with him a lot and share with him. Dr. Solon was just a gem. I think he's in the United Methodists because he and also he served at Pace down in VCU.
Oh, okay.
And because he eventually left Virginia Union after teaching New Testament there. And he wanted to go into the church. And his son now is a theologian. He works at Wesleyan. I think he's at Wesleyan Seminary.
Oh, okay.
And so he and his son, Dr. Solon and his son, he was a little boy when I was in seminary.
Yeah.
And so they have written books together. So Dr. Solon helped me, and I would do extra reading. I'm self-motivated and disciplined, so I do my reading and prepare. And again, I had seen teaching as an option. And when I got to Virginia Union, I realized there were not many, extremely few African Americans with doctorates in Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So a nice ready market.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, so you're talking about between 75 and 78. To my knowledge, if there were two handfuls, maybe one handful of African Americans with doctorates in Bible in the nation.
Yeah.
So there was a Dr. Whitelock, and I think he was Jamaican, but he had finished BU and he was teaching. Dr. Kofor was at ITC, didn't know him. Dr. Kofor was at ITC. He's passed now, but he was one of the earliest blacks to get a doctorate in Bible. Back in the 40s, I think it was from BU. Then at that time, a lot of us were in the Pike.
Yeah.
And so Kane Hope, I don't know if he had finished yet then. And so that was, that sold me. And so I began to seriously prep and prepare, look at doctorate studies. And so I worked on
So it sounds like, given what you just said about there being so few African Americans with doctorates, that you probably could have written your ticket to go anywhere. And you chose to go back to your alma mater, Virginia Union.
Well, that was at the seminary now. See, but beyond there, I had to go for graduate school.
To Pittsburgh, you went to Pittsburgh for the PhD.
Yeah. And so I pursued it, and I am not smart. I am disciplined. What I found is, and I saw it at Pittsburgh, smart people many times don't get degrees because they don't need them. They're smart. I've seen some guys, like guy at Pittsburgh, he was utterly brilliant. And all he was doing is working at the school, just hanging around, having fun.
Yeah. Never
It
finished.
was just something to do. And I think he had some degrees of this or that. He had several, but he was working around. It was just something to do. But this guy was brilliant. He could talk to you about quantum physics and then talk to you about history and the Bolshevik Revolution. He was just brilliant. He just walked around in rags. Another guy I met, he was in biology. His dissertation was on a floppy disk like that then. Yeah. And he was just hanging around. And these guys are brilliant. I said, what it is, and I look at most of the folks who get the degrees are disciplined.
Mm-hmm. To finish it, yeah.
And so we are disciplined, and they know how to make yourself do and stay on regimen and work at something. If you keep working at it long enough, you accomplish it. And so I'm thinking, I said all that to say, in applying, Pitt was the only one that let me in.
Yeah.
I applied to Harvard. And that's because they waived the application fee. I said, well, if they waiver the fee, that helps. Because I had to pay for the GRE. And
right.
didn't have that much money. I applied to Hebrew Union Jewish Institute in Cincinnati, and because I was thinking about studying Hebrew.
Right.
I wanted to understand Old Testament. I'm going back and forth. I'm sorry. When I left Randolph-Macon, one of the last courses I took was Life and Teachings of Jesus with Ira Andrews. And it dawned on me that Jesus was a Jew, not a Christian. So I was going to study Old Testament to get at him, to analyze him, and to critique New Testament. That got me into this Old Testament emphasis. So I was still pushing that. And I applied to Pittsburgh. University of Pittsburgh had a cooperative program with Pitt Theological Seminary, University of Pittsburgh program. And Dr. David Shannon, deceased now, who a former president of Virginia Union, who had been dean, and also he was a pastor of a sister church in Richmond. And a friend of my pastor was the dean of the seminary. And so my pastor got contact with Dr. Shannon, and so I applied. And I was accepted in the University of Pitt's program, this is my take, at the 11th and a half hour. 2 weeks before school started, I was accepted. Here's my assessment after all those years. Somebody dropped out and didn't come, and I had a spot.
Oh.
And I had saved my money, and so I was working during the summer, saved my money. So when they called, I said yes.
Yeah.
So I got in. I don't care how I got in. I got in at the 11th and a half hour. And so I went to University of Pittsburgh, and that started it. And I managed to get through. I'm not smart.
But you're disciplined.
Disciplined.
And you finished it. Good.
And I finished it under unusual terms. I did coursework from 78 to 82, and I started teaching.
Oh.
I finished the degree in 97. So no one held my hand. I
Right.
didn't always get the help or the advice or the mentoring that you would get or the coaching. I had to, and it's been my lot to watch and see. So I watch and I take notes and I learn. And so I may have been one of those who fell through the cracks, but because of sheer perseverance and discipline, I finally made it, or either they acknowledged my efforts and also uh,
So it was writing the dissertation that was the what took so long, or the teaching, or
it didn't. I did coursework 78 to 82, and then between 82 and 91, I was in limbo. So I was studying and reading and trying to make contact. And I'm suspicious, looking back now, a suspect now, no hanky panky. There were kinks in the program and tensions in the program. And I may have fallen through the cracks. And from what I gleaned looking at then and now, the university had developed the PhD program. The Pitt Theological Seminary faculty were adjuncts, but the Pitt Theological Seminary faculty were mainly controlling the program, which was the university's program. And in controlling that program, it probably had a distinctively Presbyterian theological bent to it. But the university is very ecumenical,
right.
and certainly Pittsburgh is a Jewish mecca for Jewish community.
Uh-huh.
So there may have been tensions there. And so what I've seen since then, the university has taken over control of its program. And because everything was centered at the seminary,
Yeah.
but it was the university's road. So I think there were problematic,
Right. His internal
tensions.
struggle.
Yes, and I fell through the cracks
Yeah.
because who's answering to who's working with this and that. This may be more for the tape than we ever need, but my first chair or advisor was a Lutheran. His name was Hans Eberhard von Waldo.
Sounds official.
He is German. I think he's still alive. He fought in the Nazi army as a Nazi tank commandant.
My
I think
goodness.
his father, I think, was a Lutheran minister. So I think he may have been into this by other means. My advisor who finished with me through my dissertation is Jewish.
Because you're doing
Bernard-
Hebrew studies. Yeah.
Bernard Goldstein. And several of the ones on my committee, Dr. Orbach, I took Jewish studies as
Right.
opposed to Christian studies and want to understand Jesus. And so tensions. And so these persons were on committees together, my committees together. And I'm thinking, there must have been some sparks flying or some eyeballing going on or
Right.
some tensions there. And so the university has finally gotten this program together. Meanwhile, I'm in limbo. And so by virtue of discipline, I finished my exams December 91. And after I finished the exams, faculty dropped off and they didn't tell me. I called up, oh, I've retired.
Oh,
So I
dear.
finally got the faculty on and started writing in 93, and I finally finished December 96 and defended. But still, this Randolph-Macon education was the foundation of it.
Mhm.
And so things that I've learned and principles that I adopted or gained here became that foundation, and that was it, yeah.
Well, to come back
Yes,
in the remaining time we have, you taught at Virginia Union for a long time, and then you came to teach at Randolph-Macon in 2006. So tell us about, after many years of teaching at Virginia Union, coming back, how it is to be on the other side of the classroom and the adjustments you had to make on that side.
It was great. I've been at Union 24 years then, and I was happy. When I went to get my doctorate, the then Paul Nichols, late Paul Nichols, one of my Christian ed teachers, he has his eyes on me. And so, for coming back, because persons go, come back. And so he contacted me, and I had a chance to come back to start teaching once I had done my coursework. And so that was a great way of giving back and working in an institution to kind of help. And coming here, Dr. Martin was retiring, and he and I think Dr. Holman was the dean at the time. Ira Andrews and either Dr. Martin had contacted me about an opening in religious studies, and if I wanted to teach or if I knew of someone whom they could recommend. I thought it was a godsend. I said, this is the first time my job knocked on my door. And I said, I've always wanted to teach here. I at least wanted to be the first. Charlotte Fitzgerald, she beat me. I wanted to be the first to come back and teach, and so she beat me. I remember beating her one time. And I had taught a course here in, I think it was fall of 90.
Oh, you did? As an
Old
like visiting or adjunct or... Oh, okay.
I drove
fall
up.
of 1990 you taught.
I think
okay.
it's fall of 1990, I think it is. I taught Old Testament. I think Ira or BJ, BJ had me do a course as an adjunct, and so it was Old Testament. And so this was just a dream to teach here, and so I took the job as an opportunity hire and chaired my first year. And I gleaned... BJ must have retired already. I think Professor Willie Chappell retired, and Ira probably was stepping down. And so
Yes.
To anchor the program and to keep it going. And so I was a substitute emergency man, come in, and I held it down. And at that time, Hal Breckenberg was faculty with me. We were just the two of us, and Darrell, the chaplain, was there.
Yes.
And so I think Hal had been here, or he was either adjunct or something of this sort. And we went through a search my first year, and we hired Hal. And my thoughts was, I showed my hands, to some degree. This is a good guy. Why are we getting rid of him?
Right.
And so we looked at wonderful candidates and all. I remember Ben Huff and I going to SBL, and we interviewed 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. Sunday was horrendous. We saw 11 folks, and so for 8 hours we were interviewing.
Oh.
And Saturday we saw several, and good candidates. You're looking at things, but my thinking was, Hal was here, and he had done a good job. His records were good, and he was experienced with here, and so I was thinking, shucks, why throw him away or something like this? And so we went with him, and so that's been the two of us, and Darrell was the third. Ira still did some, and then we had bunches of adjuncts.
Yes.
But coming back here was a chance just to work at my other alma mater, and I was hoping to finish out my career here, and so, but it's just great being here, and I wanted to get out of seminary. In the course of my life, I would say my life, the pendulum has swung tremendously far to the right, in the sense of fundamentalism and some of these right-wing views. They've gone, wow. And now with the media and the internet, everybody is publishing and putting their stuff out there and really adamantly advocating that they are right. And so traditional seminary, as your husband and all of us may have experienced it, is kind of waned. And so I saw this at Virginia Union, and so I wanted out.
Yeah.
And I said, my dream job would be to teach Bible in a religious studies program in a state school that doesn't have any religious background or restraint. So I'm free to operate as a scientist.
Yes.
Put it under the microscope. I don't have to believe anything, and I can go for it. I saw opportunity to do that here.
Yeah.
And And a lot of times I have to check the students about their belief because they're bringing their Sunday school lessons,
Yes.
or they're tapping on the internet and downloading these lessons. And I said, no, this, you're not looking at the text.
Yeah.
I said, I'm reading the text like I don't believe it.
Right.
And I try to put my beliefs on hold intentionally, and I think I do a good job of it because a lot of folks get mad at me.
Oh, that's probably a sign you're doing something right. Right.
But here, that was the joy of teaching here. And also, I would love to teach, dream, I would love to teach Bible in public school.
Oh, well, that'll be the day, I guess.
See, but not as for evangelical purposes or this thing sort. It's just to help them to understand this very foundational text, ancient text that is very important for our society.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking I share with the students here. If you're in Quran, if you're Iraq or Iran, you learn the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
Here, Bible is good. I said, even though if you're not going into ministry, and many of them not, you're going to be dealing with a society that is greatly influenced by biblical interpretation or misinterpretation and biblical visions and ethos that you have to navigate if you're going to be successful in your careers. And so that's a sales pitch I have to try to help them to understand Bible. And I say, and everybody believes something. My view, I tell them, nobody is an atheist. Everybody believes. Everybody has something that occupies what I call the God spot in their lives. Their premises, assumptions, presuppositions. In religious studies, you call them beliefs. And this is their operative data whereby they process their world.
Yeah.
And I said, when these things fail a person, they become traumatized, schizophrenic, suicidal. I said, this is what happens. And so I understand the role of religious studies. So in working with the kids, I call them kids, I try to impress that upon them and make them think it's a challenge.
Yeah.
What I've learned from them is, and them, the courses and the students I've taught, there are different learning styles. I've had to learn to navigate different learning styles. That's how I put it. And I think these different learning styles have been keyed by technology.
Yeah.
So technology, with its advantages of making information accessible, has not had the means to scrutinize this information, and then persons using the technology have not understood how this information is acquired. So the students can't connect the dots, but they can push the button and get information, but they don't sometimes understand the question or how to follow the question. I ask students, and I think I shared this one time, maybe the last interview, I asked, how many of you know what a card catalog is in one class? And about 7 raised their hands. But the card catalog, you had to think your way around. You had to connect your dots by thoughts. They push the button, and they don't know the connections.
Right. That's done for them behind the scenes, right?
Yes, and so I've had students wrestle. I had students, for example, do not as good as they could on exercises because I use synonyms for other words we use in class. And they didn't know that the word I used was synonymous to or the same as this other one. Or sometimes words may sound alike. It wasn't intentional. I just used this word, but it sounded like another word, and this guy didn't know what the word meant.
Right.
Or they haven't thought that I might Google the dictionary and look up the word. But these are different things. So even the computers correct your grammar and things like this. So that I'm learning how to deal with that, and I think I've become successful at it, grown with it. The other thought for me is, as I look at it, it's put me in a tizzy. I feel, sometimes I feel, it sounds like crazy. I feel maybe sometimes ashamed, look like I'm giving too much. I feel almost like I'm spoon feeding them. I write notes out, I put them on Moodle.
Mhm.
So I have class sessions. I put the notes on Moodle. Sometimes the notes from the readings.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not sure if they can take notes.
Mhm.
And so these are the things I learned from Willie Chappell, and he would write the notes on the board, or the others would write it. So here's a case now from the book. Whatever textbooks I use, I scour all of the information out of it, every chapter that I want. I make PDFs and break them up, and now put them on Moodle as I cover it. And so I'm doing notes for them, and I'm thinking, there was some virtue in writing these notes on your own. Even some
Yes,
of them
I
won't
mean
want to
it's a
copy
learn.
them.
Yes, it is a learning method, isn't it?
Those are some challenges that I'm seeing,
Mhm.
and just trying to get them to push. And so also the matter of discipline. Um, the late Val Wooten was my English teacher here, and my essays, they look just as terrible as anything else, as he mocked them up and everything. But I survived my freshman year, and all those things that he had, well, most of those things, practically all those things that he attacked, I began to improve on and use
Mhm.
in practice in my paper writing. And so I thank him for it. He did his job, and I did mine to learn from it. Yeah, I don't kind of see that sometimes here as I push them, and I see numbers of faculty sitting and working with students, and I try to work with them. At least I open my doors. I tell them, "You're welcome to come."
Yeah.
But this is a
And
chance just to
sometimes you
give
see
back.
that in the
Yeah,
long term.
yeah, it's a chance just to give back, and I'm grateful for it, and I think it has made some impact. And I had a student invite me to be at her hooding, and I can't be there because of church obligations, and I've kept in touch with some who are in the schools and all. So it's just really exciting.
That is.
And they've gone away to other places, and some of those faculty there know me, and also they've seen
And
some
they
of the
know your
pieces I've
students, or
written.
your students will be saying,
And
Professor Ross
and
will
I
put
just
stuff.
laughed.
Yeah.
Lynda Bainham, she went down to Duke, and she saw where I had written a contribution to a book, and also one of the faculty down there I know. He was like a
Yeah.
big brother to me.
Oh,
And so that
good.
was really sweet and all. And so it's just fun. Little things like that are just so sweet.
That's good. Let me ask you one other question about the faculty, and then we'll
Okay.
close up. But the diversity among the college's student body is very impressive and has made great strides since you were a student. In fact, I think in the current freshman class, almost 30% of the current freshman class is minority of
30%.
some
Okay.
description, almost. And our student body is well in the 20 something percent
Mm-hmm.
overall. But faculty diversity has not progressed as well. And you mentioned Charlotte
Mm.
Fitzgerald beat you to it. Can you talk a little bit about, as you came back as an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity hire, how that experience has been being a minority faculty member? So you're
Mm.
almost mirroring your student
Mm.
days as far as
Mm.
that goes. Can you talk about?
Yeah. This has been interesting. I didn't know this. Um, at present, I think there are 4 African American faculty. 4. Um, we have new one in English,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's the newest one, and then psychology, history, myself, and so what I'm sensing, the thing that I've sensed is that diversity, the lines of diversity may be drawn differently, and they're not drawn based upon African American cards, but then there are others, and so we have ladies here, so that line has certainly been crossed, but then you have different nationalities
Mm-hmm.
have been
Mm-hmm.
represented, and different ethnic groups in that regards. Even I'm thinking from hearing conversations, um, other gender dimensions.
Mm-hmm. It counts as minority. Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the African American one has not been, the card hasn't been pushed that much or that hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because we have so many female
mm-hmm,
faculty members that
mm-hmm,
that is
mm-hmm,
our quote diversity, and that
mm-hmm.
is well
Uh,
compensated. Yeah.
and I'm thinking to a certain degree, it may not be good. And in this case, the downside of it is in these United States, and then in other areas of the world, um, African Americans are playing prominent positions, good and not so good. But they're playing prominent positions, and students who are coming need to be able to, I think, appreciate that and be able to relate to that. My serious thought in the back of my mind is how many of the students have had an African American male teach them. Before I left Virginia Union, several years before I left to come here, an African American student in seminary told me that I was his first black professor. He never had a black man teach him.
First black male or
Mm-hmm.
black professor ever.
Yeah, period.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And he was African American. And then I thought of here, how many of the students here have had, I say, someone who looks like me?
Right.
If I took off all of my attire and put on some regular clothes, I look like a drug guy. I look like a hood fella, yeah, because I'm all bearded. I'm not the typical clean shave. And even to the tallness, you play basketball? No, I haven't played basketball in a whole long. I hold pens and pencils in my hands, and so
Yeah.
that kind of cultural orientation and appreciation is, I think, maybe lacking, and that's one real worry that I have. That may be the missing component. I think our students are traveled and
Yeah.
exposed, and I think they're used to seeing the other nationalities and all. But I question whether they have a healthy presentation of African Americans, and that is a worry. It's a worry not just for white students, but it's a worry for black students. There are black students who to me, maybe have some superficial ideas of our history and of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard about blowing up things the students have and blow ups on campus or things like this. I talk and try to share as best I can.
You mean current students?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the students I see, I try to encourage them. I've had some come to my classes and take my classes. My thoughts there. Sometimes I wonder in the back of my mind what's on theirs. I'm not going to pass you because you're black.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had some athletes, and some of them they'll be here a little bit longer. Some athletes who are a little more trifling. I'm not a pushy person, so I'm not going to whip them and beat them. I use the expression, I'm not going to be their daddy.
Yeah.
But some of them, I'm thinking, they were a little trifling, a
Right.
little more trifling, and trifling with this wonderful experience of education that you have here. And my worry is, you may be able to manipulate the system or navigate and graduate, but did you get what you need to have?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wonder sometimes with that. Oh, I wonder that aches my heart sometimes
Mm-hmm.
for all of them.
I was going to say, but that's across the board. I'm
Yes,
sure. Yeah.
yes. And so that's my worry. Will the school really appreciate that? And here's a case where the Black Studies minor probably needs to be a major.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was one of those interviewed by Dr. Williams when she came and had a chance to hear some discussions and all. And I've questioned Black Studies programs before, but I guess I've had a chance to mature and see maybe some of the soft spots in my thinking. There's some value in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Asian, I don't know if it's the Asian Studies minor or program now.
It's now major.
Major.
As of a couple of
And
years ago.
so-
Yep.
And so here, and I'm thinking in these United States, if we were somewhere else, even if we were somewhere else, we probably would need it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need it. And because our world is overtly now diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, I think they need the savvy and they need to be sensitized there, and so that's my big a big concern of mine, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly, um, yeah, that's a concern.
Mm-hmm.
This is a concern.
That's a good valid concern. Well, I want to thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming back and
Mhm.
especially sharing a lot of the
Thank
details
you.
about your student days
Thank
and your
you.
time as a faculty member here. I will give you the last word. Are there any summing up
Hmm.
comments you'd like to make?
Hmm. Randolph-Macon has always, to me, been a great place. You can get what you need here. It's just a matter of going to get it. And I'm just thinking, this, I'm happy with the school, and sadly I'll be moving on. But the thought is, this holds a dear spot in my life, and so this is one of my cradle experience places. This is my birthing
Mm-hmm.
places,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping the school will continue to appreciate the smallness and the intimacy and the quality of the smallness. Now, when we're playing, I think a lot of things are dictated by the market, and
Yeah.
so we have to have numbers to keep this and that. And so I'm
Yeah.
hoping that there will be a concerted effort to preserve the intimacy and the integrity of the smallness of the small
Mm-hmm.
college. And I think that's something I'm hoping we continue to fight for.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming
Thank
and sharing with Making Memories today.
Thank you. Thank you.